Get to more discussion about the jobs number this morning on that big miss off of expectations. The Labor Secretary, Marty Walsh, joins us. Mr. Secretary, I think it's our first Jobs Friday together, so welcome. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
I've seen some comments from both you this morning and from Jared Bernstein that you don't see a correlation between the weakness in employment gains and benefits. What makes you say that? Why are you so confident about that?
Well, you know, under normal circumstances, and certainly we're not living in normal circumstances, the 266,000 job gain a month is a good number. Unfortunately, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And if you look back on the last 3 months, the United States economy has added 500,000 per month, 500,000 new jobs per month, as compared to the previous 3 months where it was 60,000. So we're definitely going in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go. There's no question about it. And we're still dealing with the pandemic.
So I guess my question is, do you believe that fiscal support for the unemployed, which obviously was much needed in the depths of the pandemic, is now creating an inability for those people, or an unwillingness for those people to put their hand up for a job, absent higher wages?
No, I still think we need unemployment. Obviously, we still have millions of Americans out of work. Many of those Americans, don't have opportunities at this moment. I know that we're making a correlation between open jobs and people that are unemployed, but it's not a fair correlation. And when you think about that, this month, the positive sign of this month's report is that more Americans looked for a job in the month of April than they had in the previous month. So I think as we continue to move forward here, hopefully in the coming months, we're going to see lots of those Americans that are looking for jobs, finding jobs, and I'll be able to stand in front of this camera and talk about the great gains we've had. But I still think 266,000 jobs this month is a good number.
Mr. Secretary Jim Cramer, thank you for coming on Squawk on the Street. I got an idea for you. I think that if the CDC were to say that there are such things as vaccine passports, then businesses that require them, including restaurants, say Broadway, they would open immediately. And that would make many more jobs come available. It would offer some certainty, and yet they're not doing that. They've made things very uncertain. We were going to hear from the cruise industry where they're just baffled. And the CDC is, I think, responsible for making it so your job is very hard.
Well, one of the things I think that I don't know if the vaccine passports are necessarily the way to go. Maybe they are, but I think that we have to just continue to push to make sure people get vaccinated. There's over 200 million vaccine shots that have been given out in this country. In some of our populations, we have I wouldn't call it herd immunity, but we have lots of older people that have been vaccinated, over 75, a good portion of people over 65. But we do need to get more vaccines out there. But I'll just add one more thing to that, which has nothing to do with vaccines. We also have to deal with childcare and schools. And those are two barriers right now, in my opinion, that are keeping people from getting back into the workforce as well, because their children are at home, they're learning remotely, or their childcare facilities aren't open. There has been investments made by the president in those areas, but we need to continue to make those investments so that people know that they can go back to work.
All right, yeah. So, Mr. Secretary, do you think that is responsible for the shortfall between the actual jobs added and what at least the people who follow this so closely had anticipated? Because I think it's the biggest gap, at least in terms of what was anticipated and what we actually got in 23 years.
Yeah, I think that has something to do with it. But also on the bright side, as I mentioned a second ago, more people looked for work in the month of April than the previous months. And I think that we're starting to see the confidence come back. I think people are starting to get more comfortable. We're seeing more people going out. We're seeing more people interacting with folks. The leisure, hospitality industry, restaurant industry had the largest gains, which is great to see. But we're still, unfortunately, we're still dealing with the pandemic, and there's lots of still uncertainty here. And I think the answer, it's not a simple answer. There's lots of different answers. I think number one, vaccinations is definitely part of the solution to get people back into the economy, get people back working, get the economy going again. We saw an increase in retail productivity and people going back shopping. That's another good sign that our economy is coming back strong. There's no question about it, we have ways to go. When the president and the Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, they were very intentional about making investments in different areas of the economy. And now we're looking forward-looking at the American Jobs Plan, as well as continuing to rebuild our economy and make it stronger as we come out of the recession. So there's no question. I mean, I can't come here today and say to you that we're fully recovered. But I can say to you today, and the American people, is that we are definitely on a track to full recovery.
We are, although not as much as people had hoped. I mean, what, though, is your rebuttal to those who will say, yeah, you're paying people not to work, and that's the main reason why this number is such a shortfall from what was expected?
There is millions of Americans that have been impacted by the coronavirus that lost their job. Some of their work's not coming back. That we've lost restaurants, we've lost businesses. We're still in. I wouldn't say we're in the midst of the pandemic. I don't think. I would hope not to say that. But we're still dealing and living with a pandemic. And as we continue to move forward here, we will continue to recover and continue to add jobs to our economy.
Mr. Secretary, we talk all the time about construction, housing, the lack of inventory, the lack of supply. Seasonally adjusted construction, basically unchanged. Can you help our viewers understand how that's possible?
There's lots of work going on out there. We saw permits being pulled, rising across this country, building permits being pulled. During the pandemic, most of the construction didn't really stop. A lot of construction continue to move forward. When we talk about lack of or need for building more housing, that's a question we have to ask cities and towns all across America. There's issues. I mean, I'm a former mayor, so we permitted lots of housing. We have lots of housing in the permit process and lots of housing in construction process. But I think we have to be real intentional about building more housing in this country.
Finally, it's been a few days, but you did talk to Reuters a few days ago about reclassification of workers. It's big implications for companies like Uber and Lyft. In any way, do you want to pull back those comments, or do you think this is a discussion that's going to gain momentum?
I think being an employee is crucial as we move forward here. That's a conversation for another day I think we're going to have here. But it's something that when I was talking to the reporter the other day, we were talking about misclassification and we're talking about the gig economy. And the question was asked kind of a broad question. I answered it in a broad way, but it did spark a reaction. But I do feel that we have to look at our employees that are misclassified and to make sure that they're classified correctly and make sure that they get the wages and what they deserve as employees.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.